Hey there. Three different clients of mine have been struggling with a very unusual thing. That is that they've all gotten some kind of feedback that suggests they're sort of robotic. They don't have emotional intelligence and they are not seeming empathetic or feeling. The weird thing is that all three of these clients work in different companies in completely different roles. And I work really intimately with them as an executive coach, and they're not. They actually do have EQ. They actually are empathetic. They're incredibly introspective people, and I would love to work with any one of them. So, why do their colleagues feel that way? Why don't they feel a sense of comfort? Why do they feel mistrustful? Really, that's the bottom line. They don't trust them. Well, when we look at how we typically build trust in the workplace when we work together in an office, we have tons of very trivial, unimportant conversations. I'm going to call them low stakes interactions. These are the conversations about last night's ball game, or when you mentioned that your kid was late getting to school, or that you're looking for an assisted living place for your mom, or any number of other completely off the cuff comments that little by little build a sense of affinity. That's how we get to know people. And trust builds through those little trivial, low stakes interactions. Well, when we're working remotely, it's quite different because we don't have those unexpected small talk opportunities. Now, there are a lot of us who find small talk super annoying. I'm probably one of them. It seems interruptive and kind of insipid, not really relevant to anything that matters. But small talk exists for a reason. It's one of the ways that human beings create relationships. It's how we get to know each other with nothing at stake. When you run into the same person when you're walking your dog on the street every day, day in and day out, and you talk about the weather or the pothole on the road or that person who doesn't pick up their dog poop, every one of those little non-important, low stakes interactions is like putting a penny in a jar. And eventually that jar is full of pennies, and you now have a sense of affinity and trust. But when you're working remotely, every conversation is scheduled and they all have a purpose, and they tend to be managerial or transactional. So at the end of that conversation, whether it's on Zoom or by phone or whatever it is, what you've done is you've accomplished that transaction, but you haven't put a penny in the trust jar. And so the trust doesn't build and people don't get to know each other. I think we've all had the experience, for example, of when you're working in an office, there's somebody in the office who's very sarcastic. And at first, you may even think they're kind of a jerk. Like, why is that person always sort of insulting me? But over time, you come to learn their snarky way of interacting. You may give back as good as you get. And then when you're having a serious conversation with the person, knowing that about them comes to the foreground, because you can tell whether they're being serious or they're joking. You can tell that when all the snark disappears, something important is going on. But that if they're joking and insulting you, everything's fine. You don't learn that when you only have transactional interactions. So, how can you replace that trust building mechanism that happens naturally when you work together with people in one space, but that doesn't seem to happen at all when you work remotely? And this really matters not for those transactional conversations, but it matters for the high stakes interactions. For example, if you're doing performance reviews, or if you're going to push back against a project, or if you're asked what you think of the new direction and you think it sucks and you think you should go in a different direction. There's space for you to have those kinds of difficult interactions only when people already trust you. But the trust isn't there unless you've had this huge number of low stakes, trivial, small talk kind of interactions. So you need to cause that. It's not going to happen naturally. Now, yes, some companies have implemented kind of randomizer colleague opportunities, and I think you should definitely do that. But you can create this yourself. First of all, offices are opening. Go to the office. I know it's a pain in the neck. I know the commute stinks. I know you're very comfortable at home, but go to the office. Being in the office gives you the opportunity to have low stakes, small talk interactions with people who eventually you may have high stakes conversations with. The other thing you can do is you can just take the bull by the horns and start calling people. Get them on the phone, ask how they're doing, ask how their week's going, ask how their kids are, share about yourself. Say you went on a hike and you have 5 blisters, or that you're trying to learn how to play the piano, or you're going to Italy, so you're taking an Italian course. Ask them what they're reading. These little non-important conversations eventually add up to the kind of trust that makes it possible to get serious work done. We talk about psychological safety for groups, but psychological safety needs to exist between individuals, and it won't happen unless you do something to cause it. I hope this has been helpful. There is an article on the same subject on my website, and also if you subscribe to my newsletter, you will get it in your inbox, and it has links to some of the research that I mentioned here and additional research that I mentioned in the article. Also, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. These videos come out every few weeks. There's not tons of them, obviously, but at least you'll get notified when there's a new one. And of course, please do go visit my website and learn more about the services I provide. Thanks so much.